I really take that time to pray about it first and kind of listen. That's kind of where I was at with Wells Fargo. I just kind of kept hearing the Lord tell me like, I think something new's coming your way. And I prayed about it. And I really felt the Spirit lead me to a property, just kind of driving down the street. And 2 weeks later, that property had a listing on Indeed, and I got hired on the spot.
Welcome to the Midweek Motivation Podcast, where we bring practical help for your faith and life. Here's today's episode.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's Midweek Motivation. My name is Jess, and I'm one of the pastors here at Westside, and I'm here with my friend Carlee. She actually heads up our hospitality ministry here at Westside. Kills it. It's awesome. Yeah. So just so that we get a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit, we're talking about work and faith today. Like that's the topic of conversation. And so what kind of jobs have you had in the past? Like what kind of work have you done? Let's share with us what you loved and what you hated. I don't know. What was the best and the worst?
Yes. Majority of my career was in that fashion retail industry, management. But I loved it. I, did everything from floor sets to leading teams when it comes to sales and all of that. I loved working in the fashion and retail and just, doing all of that. But unfortunately, my company's closed, just due to bankruptcy and stuff. So I've kind of moved in different directions, still kept that management leadership side. So now I'm managing properties and, but I've done everything kind of in that sales too. I worked at kiosks in the mall and was selling hair straighteners and makeup. I was going door to door with Kirby vacuums.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I had a Kirby actually.
So, I've done everything kind of when it comes to sales. I worked at Wells Fargo for a little bit, but that was kind of that job where it was nothing against banking or Wells Fargo, but it just was a little bit too slow for me. I'm a little bit more of a fast pace. I like to be able to, have that engagement with customers or just with, people, clients. So it's kind of where I'm at right now is still in management, but
that's awesome. I love that. I come from the opposite world. I like the slower pace. I like people engagement, but sales, I would hate that. But that's super cool. I love that. So that was your favorite part, was really just kind of engaging with people?
Yeah. I mean, of course, I'm a fashionista, so I've always loved, I was if I can work somewhere and have fun and get a discount, count me in.
Heck yeah.
So, and most of those companies that I worked for a long time. So I had, I loved being there. But I loved the discount and, setting the walls. I'm more of a visual person too. So I really took pride in setting those floor sets and getting ready for the holidays, the merchandising and marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's super cool.
But sales is something I also adore. And I like, I'm a little competitive. So I like meeting those goals and, kind of having those challenges as well. So
right on. That's so cool. Okay, well, we're talking about work and faith. So it's really easy in today's world to kind of separate those things. I think that our culture kind of helps to create a space where we have to sometimes. But honestly, it can create a little bit of a division in an individual to be able to separate those things out. So can you share, what role does your faith play in your work?
Yeah, I think more recently, just as I've kind of, grown closer to have that relationship with Christ, I've really, whenever I get opportunities or things are brought to the table, I really take that time to pray about it first and kind of listen. That's kind of where I was at with Wells Fargo. I just kind of kept hearing the Lord tell me I think something new's coming your way. And I prayed about it. And I really felt the Spirit lead me to a property, just kind of driving down the street. And 2 weeks later, that property had a listing on Indeed, and I got hired on the spot, and that's the position that I'm at right now.
No kidding.
So sometimes for me, I think that's newer for me, where I've been I always wanted to kind of be in control and be okay, what's, next for me. But more recently, I've had to really sit down, pray about it, listen and hear God tell me, is this okay? Is this what you want to do? And things like that. But also with my faith at work is, my teams and my people they don't know, but I'm like praying before I go into work. You know, I'm like praying, like, let today be a good day. Let these applicants be approved, and let's, you know, like, so really manifesting those type of things through prayer and just, you know, laying that all out on the table is like what works best for me, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What kind of helped you to make that transition to lean into allowing God to lead you in that direction?
Yeah, like I said, I think before I always kind of wanted to like be in control.
Yeah.
And I also feel like I took too much on at many times,
Okay.
And got overwhelmed, got burnt out, or thought I could do it all. And that just, you know, and I think also I got to a place where I lost my job with a company, not only once, but twice with the same company.
Oh, okay.
So they closed, reopened,
Yeah.
and closed again.
Yeah.
And that put me in a place where I knew that at any time it could change.
Yeah.
You know, and I was okay with that. But going forward, I was like, I want to hear and know what's for me and not just, you know, jump ship if I'm like scared that they're going to like close or something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted to really be listening and attentive to what, you know, God has planned for me. That's why, like I said, when I was in that position with Wells Fargo, I really, you know, took the time to say, okay, God, like, what do you have planned for me? Because if it were up to me, I'd go this way or that way,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But I think that, like, I don't want to say trauma, but that experience of like losing a job and just being in a really sad place just, you know, brought me closer to just really, you know, diving into the word and just like realigning the way that my mind thinks about, you know, new doors opening or like the next steps in my life and stuff like that. It really put me in a place to think things through a little bit more because I was, you know, kind of like a yes person.
Yeah.
But like going through like, you know, different like mentorships like HCLI. I mean, you were my coach in HCLI and I think, you know, that I was always taking on too much. And even, you know, you telling me like, you don't have to say yes to everything, you know? Like, oh, okay. You know, so experiences like that.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh man, something that you said popped, like triggered something, and now I kind of lost it. But like you made a comment about how you were. This is it. You made a comment about how you were driving down the road, and you were like, "Oh, I think God's pointing me to work in this property," and then something opened up for you. Like, that was the first time that you experienced that?
It was. I had been at Wells Fargo, and there wasn't anything wrong.
Yeah.
I felt like, again, I felt myself not being, you know, the happiest there, but I loved my team that I was working with and I loved the customers and stuff. And it was a great opportunity. But I found myself being like, I don't think that this is for me, you know? So that was kind of like that moment where I was just like,
Maybe
you know,
not.
what's next? So again, I was praying and, you know, things like just kind of like, I really need to find, you know, what's next and what's next. And yeah, we were just driving down the road and, you know, so my daughters were with me and they're like, why are we going into this apartment complex? And I'm like, I don't know. I just hear the Lord telling me like, turn in there. We drove through around to kind of check it out.
Yeah.
We also were in kind of a place of like thinking of moving and things like that.
Okay.
So that was like
couple of things lining
multiple
up.
doors opening up, you know, so yeah, able to get that job and, you know, and then also move on to site. So it was like, answered prayers all wrapped up in one, but
That's so cool. It just makes me think, like, I wonder what the takeaway is for being able to recognize the direction that God's leading when you're looking for something. You know what I mean? Like, okay, God, I want to be obedient. I want to step through the open doors that you're opening. Help me recognize what that looks like and what doors you're opening. You know what I mean? So like if you had like a takeaway from that, what would you say? Like how would you next time be able to recognize, oh, this is what God's pointing to?
Yeah, I think it's, for me, like I said, it's kind of hard because I, you know, always think back and I'm like, I think I've been hearing the Lord speak to me in so many situations and I wasn't obedient and I wasn't, you know, listening. But for me, it's more of like that journaling, that devotional time of really like writing it down to make sure that like, you know, is it something that's also like aligning with kind of where I'm going?
Yeah.
You know? But I guess like the takeaway for me also is just that I've been in experiences and in situations where, like I said, day and night. It's like you're working one day and the next day they come in and you're like, you no longer have, but
that has to be hard. I remember talking to you about this actually.
I'm like, oh, okay. But I think for me, like, I'm also always thinking about the future, kind of like, and what I've had to kind of stop is that, where I have dreams and I have goals and I have those things, but not thinking so far ahead and just really being present in that moment, and just really being like, okay, let me, do what I'm doing right now and what you have planned for me, God, like I'll execute that when it's that time.
Yeah. So really some trust. And I see like that there's some confirmation happening in that experience that you shared with us, right? Like a couple of things are lining up at the same time. Like I'm looking for a new job opportunity. I'm also looking for a place to live. Like, God's like confirming it maybe through a couple of different channels at the same time, so you can like recognize it that way. I've experienced that too. So I think that's really cool. Like practical takeaway, you know what I mean? Like maybe that's trying to tell me something in this and I should check it out.
And I always, like I said, I write it down and I'm kind of like, kind of putting that vision, writing that vision. But I'm like, okay, if it's for me, like God will, make a way.
Yeah. I saw, I'm trying to remember the name of the actress. Her last name is Washington. I can't remember her first name, but she said in an interview, she's like, I pray about it and I chase after it. Those are the two things that I do to be successful. And if I pray about it and it doesn't happen, then I know that it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But if I don't pray about it and I chase after it, it could not be for me. If I'm doing both of those things and it happens, then I know that it was for me, kind of a thing. And it sounds like that's what you're doing in that process. That's cool.
That's definitely been, and I think, like I said, as I continue that wasn't something I did before. As I kind of continue that, I've kind of, adapted that and took it in, and I do that now, not only just with jobs, but just like other things, relationships or, community organization opportunities or just things like that, to just make sure that, I'm not taking on things that are not part of his plan.
Yeah, so. That's so cool. I love that. I also heard you talk about how you prep for your day. Like you start out your day with prayer and asking for blessing on what it is that's coming up. And so that kind of, I can see that in you because I can see that you are incredibly intentional when it comes to connecting with people just in general, but also I can see the fruits of how intentional you are about connecting with people at work because you bring those people to Westside regularly.
Yes.
Which in my experience in the corporate world has always been a challenge. I know that I'm introverted, and I when I was in the corporate world was also very shy. So that definitely wasn't my strength. But it can be difficult to engage with people about faith and struggle and life issue, like answers to life issues that people are going through, and directing them to Jesus. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it could be a few different things. Sometimes it's like, what I'm wearing, like, they notice that there's like a cross or like sometimes I have like, sweatshirts or shirts and things that have, scripture or just, and I think sometimes that can just like initiate those type of conversations. And then they're like, oh, where, and then it just kind of comes up, where do you go to church or, what do you do? But also I feel like it's kind of a God moment because sometimes some of the people that come in, to Westside, that I have like lived on my property or I've had encounters with and things, they don't know that I'm a part of Westside. And then when they, they see me here, they're like, oh, and then it just kind of builds that relationship as well and just that stronger connection. So I think it's, cool. Just kind of sparking that, conversation just as well. But it gets kind of harder in the job that I'm in right now because there's so many like fair housing laws and things that we do have, So when I'm on the clock, I can't
Yeah.
But when I'm living there and not on the clock, that's a whole different story.
That's awesome.
So there I kind of have that favor, to have that. But also, it's always for me kind of behind the scenes. I've been truly blessed. Kind of going back to my fashion job, my boss and basically all of my coworkers were all Christians, and I was not a believer at that time. And I had them praying over me. One of them actually went to one of our sister churches, Epic, and was putting me on their connection card for 1 year before I even started coming to Westside on my own. And so I've kind of took that with me. And so when I see people or I know that they're going through things just through normal conversation, I pray for them.
Yeah.
And they don't know, but then they come to me next time. They're like, this happened or something. And I'm like, oh, that power of that prayer,
Yeah.
And so little things like that they don't even know it's happening, but still making that prayer for them, or, other people on my property too. Like they're maybe not believers. They're very open about that. But there's things that we do that get people excited, like, Easter egg hunt, stuff like that. So it's like, oh, hey, we're having an Easter thing. Come. They come, they check it out, they like it, things like that.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Inviting them to your, yeah. Okay, I see what you mean now.
Yeah, so it's like one of those things where it's like not just a typical, Sunday service. It's like, there's stuff for kids if you guys want to, come. And then it just kind of...
That just anybody would be interested in joining, whether or not they, believe in Jesus. Yeah, that's cool. I love that. So be aware of what's going on and invite people to those events. That
definitely inviting.
would be friendly to them. Yeah, that's so cool. So what I hear you saying is the prayer side of things is really, really huge for you. I love, though, the heart behind the prayer, especially when you're engaging with the people on your property and stuff. Like I hear you saying that that you genuinely care about them. Like you're listening to what it is that's going on in their life, and you're checking in on them, and then you're praying, and you get a chance to encourage them. So you're developing a relationship where it creates space for you to actually have those conversations in a safe way. And that's super cool. I love that.
Yeah, and I think for me, one thing was, that I've learned is that it's on God's timing. Yeah. And I think even just with my own, just relationship with Christ, like it wasn't on their timing when they were praying over me and I really need it. But, now they get to join me. Like my old boss has came to, watch me get baptized and, came to the women's ladies desserts and things like that. So, it's kind of like it's on his timing. So. Yeah. And so I like to see those breakthroughs through them, Yeah. As much as I would love to share, like, hey, I put you in my prayer and thing, it just warms my heart just knowing that God is answering those prayers for them.
That's so cool. And who knows, someday you might be able to tell them that, So that's so cool. Yeah. I love that it's like in worldly terms, you might say that you're paying it forward, except for that impact is exponentially greater because, you're using the power of prayer and God. So that's super cool.
Yeah, and work too, but also, I'm heavily involved in my community, just like with cheer.
Yeah.
And,
I know that's your baby.
That is my baby. And my babies are, in it. So I think it's not work necessarily, but it is also something that it creates work. It's a job, volunteer work. Yeah. But that's also where my heart is, where I'm seeing my cheerleaders come or my mentor cheerleaders come, and they're taking those steps to get baptized or, be in the church and stuff. And that just warms my heart because a lot of them, like when we do our car wash here, they're like, oh, like, yeah, I know Westside, or I might come check it out, or, what's going on? And then it's like, yeah, come. And,
I'll be here on Sunday.
Yeah, I'll be here every Sunday. But I've seen that through conversation, and they come, and now, some of them are joining me on hospitality. Yeah. And so it's just kind of like, that's being that vessel in those areas as well.
Yeah. What I see you doing, which I absolutely love, is you're taking your spiritual gifting and using it everywhere you go. You know what I mean? That gifting of evangelism and prayer and compassion and caring for people, and using that in your vocation, in your work. You use it when you're just connecting with people in community. You're using it when you're volunteering with the kids. Like, that's amazing. We talked about that Pastor Steve talked about that on Sunday about connecting your job to Jesus, connecting it to community, and connecting it to your mission. And I see you doing that, every single one of those things in what you're sharing. So that's so cool. Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah, of course.
your story and your faith and work. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like I said, I think for me too, as I kind of, continue on, I think those spiritual gifts is something that has also, kind of unlocked some things in me, and just kind of like when I'm listening, like, okay, is this, before I would have never been having a conversation with somebody about Jesus. But, when I'm like hearing like, hey, this is your time, like, okay, let me, and just inviting them to other things, that I'm a part of. And just like I said, like even smaller things, or just other like women's conferences and things like that. And just,
doing life together. That's what it's about. That's so cool. Well, so if we were to leave this conversation, is there any one thing that you really would want to stand out for people who are trying to connect faith and work together that you think is like the key, like even just for you in your own personal experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it a little bit. To me, like prayer is just super important because it's like really where I'm, having that time with the Lord to just really hear what's going on. Because through all the work and all the stuff that's going on, we can, get kind of caught up in those thoughts or in, certain things. Or conversations even, and I think, like you said, trust as well, because for me, I have conversations all the time, and sometimes what people say through conversations can also influence decisions, or make you think, oh, this is or this isn't, And so I think for me, the biggest thing is, that prayer and just spending that quiet time, Like I said, I'm a person that has to write it down. Not everybody likes to, write things, but I think journaling or, something like that, or, just really, spending that quiet time with the Lord just to hear. And I fast sometimes, though, just for small times if I'm asking for those big prayers. But
that's cool. Awesome. Well, I love working with you, and I appreciate you so much. It's been beautiful to watch you take steps and grow in your faith, and I just want to encourage you in that. Like, I love it. You're incredible. Thank you. So thanks for joining me.
Yes, of course, and thank you to you, because like I said, you were my coach through HCLI, which join HCLI, everybody. But that was like one of those times where I've always known that I've had great leadership and confidence and all these things, but it's like, how can I also allow those spiritual gifts to be a part of that and not just take all the credit, and
let God work through them so that they can work exponentially.
Let Him get the glory for sure.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, awesome. Well, thanks for joining.
Jess.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Midweek Motivation. To make sure you don't miss any content in the future, please subscribe, share, and if you enjoyed this, give us a like, and consider popping by a Westside service some weekend. You can find out more at westsidecommunitychurch.com.